Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Supervisor Giammi.
Here.
Supervisor White.
Here.
Supervisor Jones. Supervisor Schutte.
Here.
Mayor Bagwell.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. We're now going to move on to our invocation, and this morning we have Chaplain Peggy Locke from Carson Tahoe Health. Will you bless us, please?
Good morning. Today is celebration of World Health Day. Our planet, our world. You are the Lord, you alone. You have made heaven, the heaven of heavens, with all their host, the earth and all that is on it, the seas and all that is in them. And you preserve all of them, and the host of heaven worships you. Nehemiah 9:6. O God, may we be good stewards with what you have placed in our hands. Give wisdom, guidance, and discernment to those who are committed to preserving the health and environment of our community with clean air, safe water, sanitation, and where healthy food is available to everyone. We pray for the health and well-being of all people. We give you thanks for your great love, our many blessings, our families, and friends. We pray for our mayor and the Board of Supervisors, for the sheriff and the fire departments, for Carson Tahoe Hospital staff and administration, as we serve together in this great community, Carson City. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much. That was so kind. May I have the Pledge of Allegiance? Miss Buckingham, would you do us the honor of leading us?
Would you all join me, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Ms. Buckingham. Thank you. Okay, we're now on the general public comment. I don't see that anyone signed up. They did specific time for Northgate. I don't see any general public comment, but I'll just double check one more time. Okay, good. Then we're going to move on to our proclamation. And if you guys want to join or come behind, you can. Oh, yeah, never mind. It's like, oops, backwards, somebody. Okay. It's okay. All right.
Ready? Sean.
Is this it? Are we ready? I love it. I love it. All right, you guys. This is proclamation time. It's one of our favorite things to do is employee longevity and recognition, right? That's what this is all about. I wonder if I can do it without. It's getting harder, you guys. I need the glasses to read, darn it. Okay, so this is a proclamation for National Public Safety Telecommunications Week, April 10th through the 16th, 2022. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services. And whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas the safety of our police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the Carson City Sheriff's Office 911 Communications Center. I think we have a few of you with us today. They do a great job. Whereas public safety dispatchers are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services. And whereas the public safety dispatchers are the single vital link for our police officers, firefighters, and paramedics, monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information, and ensuring their safety. Whereas public safety dispatchers of Carson City Sheriff's Office 911 Communications Centers have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. And whereas each public safety dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in this past year. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, Nevada, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim the week of April 10th through the 16th, 2022, as National Public Safety Telecommunications Week and the Carson City Telecommunications Week in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and citizens safe. Really, thank you. And why don't you all join us in it? That's right. They deserve it from the entire community. Thank you. I mean, we just couldn't be safe and do this without you guys. We really couldn't, right? We count on them, and I see a bunch of the social services, even Nikki's team from the health department, people that respond to people in need. What else can we ask for? Really, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get a picture. We don't have a picture, it's not real. It might not have really happened.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, surprise, come on up.
Okay. All right, we're now on to item 6, which is approval of our minutes of March 3rd. Did any member of the board have any corrections or changes? See, I'm not there yet. If you'll wait, let's go ahead and do our minutes. So may I have a motion, please, for he's ready to go.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes, ma'am. I move to approve the Board of Supervisors meeting minutes for March 3, 2022 as presented.
I second.
I have a motion and a second for the approval of the March 3rd, 2022 minutes as presented. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed, please say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you so much. We're now going to move on to our consent agenda. We are going to pull item 8A just for a technical disclosure. Does any member of the board want another item pulled?
8C.
8C, pulled for discussion. Does any member of the public want any item from consent pulled? Doesn't look like it based on the sign-in sheet, but I'll take one. Okay, with that, I'll accept a motion for everything on the consent agenda with the exception of 8A and 8C.
Move to approve the consent agenda consisting of items 7A, 8B, 9A, 10A, 10B, 10C, 10D, 10E, and that is it, as presented.
I second.
I have a motion and a second for the approval of the consent agenda with the exceptions of 8A and 8C. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. We're going to take up item number 8A, possible action and discussion regarding Amendment 1 on a funding agreement between the state acting through our Community Development Block Grant. Supervisor Giomi, your disclosure, please.
Thank you. NRS 281A 420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. This item relates to a proposed revision in the scope of work for Nevada Health Centers using CDBG money that was allocated from Carson City. I'm employed by Nevada Health Centers, and therefore in my private commitment, I have a fiduciary duty to and a substantial and continuing business relationship with Nevada Health Centers. Because of this disqualifying conflict, I will not be voting on this matter.
Thank you, Supervisor Giomi. Does any member of the board have any other questions on this item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
I move to approve and authorize the mayor to sign the amendment.
I second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. One abstention with Supervisor Giomi. Thank you. We're now going to move on to item 8C, discussion and possible action to certify the charges and levy and direct the treasurer to collect the special assessments for fiscal year 22-23. Ms. Russell, would you give a brief overview and then we'll see
Sure.
what Mr.
This is very standard. We have to do this every year. It's a small incremental rate that goes on the taxpayer bill. The amount did not change from last year. They're exactly the same amounts as last year. It comes through the state. So the state engineer, the water. So there was no change. That's why it's on consent.
Thank you. Supervisor White, your question, please.
Yeah, I have a couple of things on this. First of all, I don't think we should raise the taxes on residents of Carson City without having public discussion. So that's the main reason I wanted it off of the consent agenda. Secondarily, I pretty much object to raising the taxes on Carson City residents when this is, the way I read NRS, this is a push down from the state. The fees that this well supervisor collects have not been raised since 2005. NRS 534.040 says that the state engineer will set the wages for those employees involved in that. So I think the state engineer needs to go back to the legislature and get these fees raised. The fees are only $100 for a new well drilling license and $50 for a renewal. And again, those fees have not been raised since 2005. I don't see why we should put this burden on the Carson City residents.
Do you have any other questions? I think first of all, this is not an increase to the Carson City residents. It's the same they've been paying for a very long time, very long time. So there's no increase and no rate change. And we're
Right.
directed by statute to do it. Doesn't mean we like it. We have a lot of directives by statute that we have to do,
Well,
but.
I take the position that the king told George Washington to do a bunch of stuff he objected to, and that's what created this country. It's time to object to this, tell them go back to the legislature and get the money somewhere else.
Okay, anybody else have a comment? No? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion. Ms. Schutte?
I move to certify charges, levy, and direct the treasurer to collect special assessments for fiscal year 2022-23 as requested, and to further direct the Carson City Chief Financial Officer to remit the special assessment collections to the state.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No,
Let the motion reflect 4 yeses and a no by Supervisor White. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on. Okay, we are now on a liquor and entertainment board. Okay. I now call the Liquor and Entertainment Board to order. Is there any public comment for the Liquor and Entertainment Board? No? Okay. We will now move on to item 15 on the agenda, which is approval of our minutes of March 4th, 2021. And the reason that's so far back there, just in case anyone wondered, is we only meet annually as the liquor board unless we have a revocation to discuss. So, may I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
I move to approve the Carson City Liquor and Entertainment Board meeting minutes from March 4, 2021, as presented.
I have a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes of March 4th, 2021. All those in favor, please say aye.
aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you so much. We're now on to agenda item 16A, which is discussion and presentation regarding the Liquor Hearings Officer Annual Report. Ms. Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to apologize to the board for the delay in getting this report to you. This is the 2021 report, and it slipped, so I apologize. That said, in 2021, we did have 6 meetings, so I do serve as the Liquor Hearings Officer, and we conducted 6 meetings. We issued 18 liquor licenses. Also, we've made a bit of a change this year that I think's been really positive, and I credit the sheriff with this. The sheriff's office has been much more engaged in the meetings this year for the first time. An officer, one of the deputies or a sergeant, will attend the hearing in uniform, will speak to the business that's seeking the business license, or the liquor license rather, and explain to them how important it is not to serve underage drinkers and to do the server training. We've also started having the businesses keep evidence of server training on premise. That's not required, but it's convenient if the sheriff's office is doing checks, they can then see if the person actually went through the server training program. So we've been really glad to have the sheriff's office much more engaged. And you see that, I think, also in the numbers when we talk about compliance. In 2021, 116 businesses were subject to compliance checks, and 31 of those businesses failed and received citations through our office. So in general, I think the program's working well. It was a few years ago that this board assigned the responsibility to a liquor hearings officer. We're continuing to work cooperatively with the health department and the sheriff's office, and I think it's working. With that, that's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions for Hope? And just for the record, please reflect that all members of the liquor board, we're present. We're the same body. Plus Kenny, who ran up and quickly sat down. Good job. Is the coffee. We have good coffee. So, but please let the record reflect all members were present. Thank you. Is there any, thank you. There's no, may I just ask one in general question? And you're right, it may be that Kenny actually has to do with it. When I looked at 31 failures out of 116, that's like a 28% failure rate here. Do you think that things got lax because of COVID and all the changes of curbsides and
I would
people?
attribute a lot of the inattentions to COVID and the breakdown in a lot of the business activities here in the town.
Okay, so you think it'll turn back around here?
I think it'll swing back around. Our officers will keep on it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was quite concerning. Thank you so much. Okay, we're now on to agenda item number 17. Is there any final public comment for the Liquor and Entertainment Board? Okay, with that, we will adjourn as the Liquor and Entertainment Board, and we will reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. We're now on to agenda item 20A, which is discussion and possible action on a proposed intrastate interlocal contract effective from July 1, 2022 to 2026 between the state and Health and Human Services Division of Welfare and Supportive Services. I see that Max is here. Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Max Cortez for the record. Good morning, everyone. Before you today is the interstate interlocal agreement that's required to be reviewed and approved by the Board of Supervisors every 4 years. We've been doing this interlocal agreement since 2008. It's about $144,555 that will be reimbursed to the city, to the general fund. And that is for the child support magistrate and the staff that assist the child support enforcement division to hear cases once a week at the juvenile division. And so this is reimbursement to the city for the staff's time, which is about 4.8% per week. And I wish I could put another zero under that 141,000, but it is what it is. But it is a great service to the community, and it allows the community not to have to drive to Reno for these services.
Okay, does any member of the board have a question? I don't see any. Is there any member of the public? I don't see that anyone signed up for it, but last call. Okay, I'll accept a motion. Supervisor Jones?
I move to approve the contract and the proposed budgets for fiscal years 2023 and 2024 as prescribed.
Second.
Presented.
Motion by Supervisor Jones and a second by Supervisor White. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day, Max. We're now going to move on to agenda item number 21A, discussion and possible action regarding the authorization for the submission of a grant by the Carson City District Attorney's Office to the Attorney General's Office for a victim witness coordinator. Does we know what this does, but does anyone have any questions of the district attorney? No? Any members of the public? Any questions, just in case? We're going to let you off the hook this morning. This is
That
how
sounds
court
great.
should go, right? Yeah.
Oh, if only.
Okay, we'll accept a motion for item 21.
I move to authorize submission of the grant application as requested.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the submission of the grant application. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on to item 22A, which is discussion and possible action regarding the Carson City Treasurer's revision and certification of the city's policy for investments. Says of surplus money. I do want to say we had a document that came on public comment that thought surplus meant we didn't need it. It's just an investment term that deals with short-term, quick need of cash and longer-term cash. And so please don't misunderstand that it means the city has surplus funds. Just want to put that on the record. Okay, Mr. Razor, would you like to go through this with us, please?
Mike, Andy. Mike.
No? Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Andrew Razor for the record, Carson City Treasurer. And so as required by the city charter, the treasurer has responsibility of investing the surplus funds for Carson City as well as maintaining a investment policy that needs to be presented to the Board of Supervisors each year for annual review. The last one that was done was in September of 2020. And then last year, when I was looking at revising it and speaking with the two investment firms that we use, GPA and FHN, started speaking with them and then looking at where we would possibly make changes based on changes in the 2019 legislature with, I believe, Assembly Bill 34 that allowed a few different investment options. But in attending a seminar for the Government Officers Investment Association and seeing what some of the better practices are throughout the country with other municipal and county organizations and seeing what they are doing, I opted to instead of just doing a simple revision, to actually do more of a revamp or overhaul of the policy to put it back in line, or I should say, move it up in line with what other government entities have as far as their investment policy, as far as controls, as far as what is allowed or authorized in law, as far as the authorized investment types, and also to put in other parts of the investment policy. I think that, gave it more professionalism and increased, and so it actually brought it more into definition or scope. And so if you look at it, the previous policy that was submitted in September of 2020 by former Treasurer Gail Robertson, that one was approximately 6 pages. And this was based off of a policy that she had obtained from the Government Finance Officers Association. And then the revision that the Treasurer's Office did expanded it more to, when you get to the bulk of the policy, it's about 20 pages. And then when you get down to the different references, the different laws that we're including with it, it's approximately 44 pages now. And so some of the changes to it, when you look at it, was to add the changes that happened with Assembly Bill 34 in the 2019 legislature that added a couple different investment options. And so when you look at the investment policy, you'll see that all of the investments that the Carson City Treasurer's Office utilizes all have to be approved or within the statute. So it's just not we're going out to invest in anything we want. It is actually defined by Nevada law as to what a city or county organization can invest it in, and that's what this reflects. And so we added a few different ones compared to the 2020 policy that increased it or kind of gave us more options, so that allows for diversification with the investment funds that helps us out with different options. Some of the other things that you'll see in the previous policy was actually a strong policy, but some of the things like we added in here was actually giving delineation or authority. So in the previous policy, it didn't specifically say who could invest for Carson City other than the treasurer. But one of the things that happens is the chief deputy treasurer for Carson City Treasurer's Office actually helps the treasurer in moving funds, investing funds, such as in placing money into the local government investment pool for the state of Nevada. And I thought it was needed to be something that is actually codified in the policy, just to show that the chief deputy treasurer has that authority to do that. That wasn't previously listed in the other policy. One of the other areas that included was also prohibited investments. The previous policy didn't have items that were prohibited. It just had items that were authorized. And I think that's one of the things that you're going to have is you're going to have a policy. You need not only talk about what you can invest in, but also what you can't invest in. And that was one of the things that we listed in here, such as, for example, we're not going to be investing in Bitcoin or any thing like that. I know that's kind of a big topic right now, but I think for the public, they need to understand that, again, what Carson City can invest in is legally authorized. And really our position in investing funds is as a buy and hold investor. We want to make sure that we're protecting our investment. It's not like we would do with the personal finances where we're taking on the risk. We're trying to reduce as much risk as possible, but at the same time, have it available for as far as liquidity if needed be, and then our return on investment. And so when I talk about liquidity, you look at the short term, kind of the medium term, and our long-term investments. So short-term investments are generally in the local government investment pool, and that's where we can pull those funds in, normally within 24 hours. And that makes it to where if we need to cover any type of purchase item or, pay for bills, we can pull that money out of our state LGIP account. And then you look at your medium and long-range investment terms or lengths, and that's where you see that we can do that based on what we have listed in policy. Any questions?
Does any member have any questions? Supervisor Giomi?
Andrew, thank you. It's certainly a comprehensive document, and I appreciate the comments you sent us and the information you provided. My question is on the ethics section 3.3, and it talks about disclosing conflicts. And I guess it feels like an open loop to me. Who do you disclose to? How does that disclosure work? How is that disclosure made public or realized? I guess that's really the only concern I have. I mean, if you have a conflict, who are you disclosing it to, and when would that disclosure happen?
Again, Andy Razor for the record. I believe on this one, if there was a conflict, that would be something that we could present to, the Board of Supervisors or the city managers to make sure that if we had, say like, for example, some type of investment where, whether personal investment or dealings with, an investment advisor, that we would disclose that, make that publicly known.
Yeah, I mean,
It
for
should
me,
be
I think
added
that
in here.
language needs to be in there somehow because right now, like I said, it feels like you're just saying you have to disclose, but that could mean walking into your office and saying, I have a conflict, and that
Yes.
really doesn't, right? Really doesn't do anybody any good. So maybe if we just add language that said that the disclosure has to be presented to, I don't know, the city manager or the Board of Supervisors, or I guess we probably need to figure that out
do.
before we approve it here.
We
So
do.
before the investment is made. I mean, it should say something like the disclosure, must be made at a public meeting with the Board of Supervisors prior to the transaction occurring.
Yes.
That would be language that I'd be comfortable with.
Okay, and we do have Deanne Woodring from GPA online, and maybe she might be able to provide a little bit more background on that. But I know as far as the ethics things, again, with the public money, it's making sure that it's up front and center.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree with it, and I understand it, and I don't doubt that you would disclose it. I just think it needs to be a public disclosure.
Yes.
I concur with that. I was trying to find, I thought somewhere it has 2 days for a response, and it should be 2 business days. Unless you're gonna work on the weekends, but, darned if I can find where I circled that, but I know I did. And then also just a question in 3.6 on your internal and external audits. The prior language was the Carson City Treasurer's Office is subject to periodic audits by the Carson City's internal auditor, including unscheduled cash and security counts. This one now has been changed to a shall, And I think that I prefer the old language, that is a purely random cash count ordered that we have internal audit do that. I think they need to be completely unscheduled.
Okay.
Because the whole objective is to, well, no, it is the objective, to catch you by surprise. I mean, you shouldn't know it's coming.
You don't think the language that says to include unscheduled cash and securities?
It's the shell, and I would rather that the internal audit group just have a may, and so you don't know if you're gonna get,
So they may not audit.
they may not audit 1 year, and then they may audit twice the next year. So I would just like it to be, the old language, I think, fit what we're trying to do. I want to let the internal audit committee work its own magic on that particular section. But where, Nancy, do you remember? I had the two business, I wanted to put business. I did not do a good job. It said something would be due in 2 days, and I wanted to change it to business days, but maybe it was in the old.
On the other item, then Northgate.
Might be, okay. So I think just with those two changes, anybody else have anything that they want? We can improve this? Everybody else is good? Any public comment? And you said you had someone on the line?
Yes, Deanne Woodring, she's investment advisor for the City of Nevada for GPA. And so she'd be available if you had any additional comments or questions.
No.
Okay,
No. With that, I'll, Supervisor Giomi, you want to,
Sure.
Make a motion?
I move to approve the treasurer's policy for investments with the changes to section 3.3 regarding disclosure prior to investment of any conflicts to this body, and the change in section 3.6, first sentence, changing the word shall to may.
perfect. Okay. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you for such a good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know it was thorough and, thank you. Really appreciate that, taking it very seriously. We're going to move on to agenda item 23A, which is discussion and possible action regarding our interlocal agreement between Carson City and the state of Nevada and our Health and Human Services Division of the Healthcare Financing and Policy. If they have any longer title, we won't approve any further contracts with them. Okay, that's Nikki Aker.
Good morning. For the record, Nikki Aker, Director, Carson City Health and Human Services. And with me, I have Mary Jane Ostrander, that she's our Human Services Division Manager, and she can answer any questions that I can't, if there are any. So this is a interlocal agreement, and what it is the our portion of the Medicaid. So it's for the medical, administrative, and transition costs for individuals that qualify for Medicaid.
Does anyone have any questions of Nikki? Pretty standard.
It's a
Again,
standard, yeah.
Very standard, I don't know. I think we do a lot of trading of activities and money between all the different agencies, but go ahead.
Yeah, if I could clarify, the Medicaid portion is for long-term care.
Long-term care, right. Okay. Does any members of the public have a question or comment on this item? Okay, no one signed up.
Can I
for-
ask a quick question?
Certainly,
On the-
Supervisor
on
Giomi.
the, On the long-term care, do we have any sense, specifically Medicaid and long-term care, because we know a bunch of people are going to drop off of Medicaid when the emergency is undeclared. So are there a large percentage of Medicaid folks who will fall into that category that are on long-term care? And maybe you don't even know the answer to that.
No, there shouldn't be. We shouldn't see a difference. We're pretty consistent
Yeah.
on how many people we have in long-term care. And they're primarily in the skilled nursing or assisted living.
Right, right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. I'll accept a motion.
I move to approve the interlocal agreement as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, ladies. Have a good day. We're now going to move on to agenda item 24A, which is discussion and possible action on the potential disposal of city-owned land at 2621 Northgate Lane. May I have a disclosure, Supervisor Giomi?
Yes, ma'am. NRS 281A 420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I've had disqualifying conflict. In my private commitment, I serve as a volunteer board member in RSVP and Advocates to End Domestic Violence, both of which are nonprofit organizations. RSVP is currently a tenant at the Northgate property, and there is a possibility that Advocates to End Domestic Violence may have an interest in the Northgate property. In my private commitment, I have a fiduciary duty to both organizations. Because the judgment of a reasonable person in my position would be materially affected by my existing relationship with RSVP and Advocates to End Domestic Violence, I have a disqualifying conflict and will not be voting on this matter.
Thank you so much. I don't think I have any other disclosures. So are you going to take it away, Robert?
Sounds good, Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the board, for the record, Robert Nellis, Real Property Manager. There's two items for your consideration today. The resolution to dispose of Northgate, as well as the attached quitclaim deed with a reversionary clause. Within the resolution, we have language in there to dispose to a qualified nonprofit, which means a Nevada nonprofit, a 501c3, and that they've been providing charitable services to Carson City for at least a year. You also have appraisals attached that the board could consider the high and low appraisal or come up with some other number. You're not bound by statute to utilize the numbers in the appraisal. Also, sealed bids will be opened on a date that the board would determine today, and it's at your discretion to reject any or all bids. And then in the quitclaim deed, there's a reversion that if the property is no longer used for charitable purposes, it'll simply revert back to the city. There's also, in the resolution, whatever changes are made today, staff can update those and then submit them with the changes to the mayor for her signature. Some things you may want to consider looking at in the resolution would be the date of the auction. You may want to push that date out further so nonprofits could have more time to secure their financing. You may also wish to look at Section 8, establishing the deadline for documentation to be submitted. Section 11A, the amount of the cash down with third-party financing, as well as Section 11B, the amount of the security deposit, whether you want that to be 2 days or 2 business days or some other time. And lastly, Sections 11C and E, the number of days the successful bidder will have to submit their final payment. That's something else the board may wish to take a look at. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. So I kind of want to just start in general of some questions and some understanding of the document itself. So if I look at we can get to date and price. We'll do that in a little bit after we take some public comment. But in item 9, the Board of Supervisors may reject any oral bids that exceed. So I kind of want to have an understanding for this board to know. So even though I may have a higher bid by a qualified bidder, I can reject that just and say, I think it's in the best interest of the city to give it to a lower bidder. I understand that, please.
Sure. Yeah. There's two answers to that. The narrower one is you can reject if you're not convinced based on their proof of ability to pay that they can actually meet what they're pledging in their oral bid. But there is also a broader power to reject any particular bid or all bids if the board determines doing so is in the best interest of the city.
So the short answer is yes, I could take away the higher bid because I want to give it to the lower bidder?
Yes. Or the board could, yes.
Huh, okay. I just want to make sure that we know what we're signing up for and what it says, so there isn't any questions later that people are upset, or they go, what happened here? I bid 10% more than the next guy, and we could say, we're still not going to give it to you without a baseline. Just, okay.
Yes.
Just want to make sure that's what it says. And then how did on 11A, how was the 25%? So I'm just going to say, I don't think that necessarily it's our job to determine the methodology for paying for it. So I don't see a need to require it to be a 75-25 loan unless, I just don't understand that. As long as they have the money and we're requiring a $15,000 cash security deposit, that is their skin in the game. That it's a real bid, you've put $15,000 on the line, so I just bring that up as a point of discussion. I understand what the methodology is you want real bidders, but I'm recognizing that the first thing we're doing is talking about nonprofits in the first place. If this was a standard auction, just to the general public, I might find that okay. So I bring that up as just a point of discussion for all of us. It's not an underlined one for us to fill in a blank, but I'd like to discuss that one. Here is my 2 days. Thanks, Nancy. It was on B. The security deposit must be paid within 2 days of notification of selection. I think that should be 2 business days. I knew it was somewhere. I thought I have a circle, because just in case there won't be a banking day, a Thursday, they'd owe that to us on Saturday. So I don't want to, let's go with 2 business days. Just a general thought. We could go further if somebody else thinks it needs to be longer. On C, from the highest bidder within 30 days, that again is not underlined for discussion, but I think that that's insufficient time. I think they're going to have to order appraisals and some stuff. I've been working on a particular house my own self this last week. There's no way it's just not going to happen in today's world that you can walk into a bank and get your work done in 30 days. A pre-letter is just going to say you're qualified. Your loan, you can have a loan from this bank. It's not going to say that the property is valid, that it appraises for enough money, blah, blah, blah. So I think we should consider increasing the 30 days. I talked to a couple of my banking friends. They thought more like 60, but again, I'm willing to, yeah, okay. So I bring those. So those are just the general discussion points. Does any other member of the board have another section or discussion point before we get to the actual amount or the date? Anybody else have other points in here? Supervisor Wade, you didn't raise your hand, okay?
Page 313 at number E there, where it's talking about the second highest bidder will have 30 days from the date of that offer. I feel like, and especially now, if we're going to push the 30-day performance period out to 60 or whatever, that second bidder, everything may have gone stale. They may not even want to have their bid in line anymore. So I think if the circumstance comes about that the second bidder is now being considered, that second bidder should have a 10-day period to rescind their bid, because maybe we had an earthquake and the building fell down, which is why the first bidder didn't even perform. Well, the way this is written, the second bidder is obligated to perform. So we need to have some grace period there for the second bidder if that should come into play.
Okay. Anybody have another issue?
I think 10 days is probably good enough, because they should be paying attention in that first 60 anyway.
Right.
Right?
Right. Anybody have another section? Supervisor Jones?
Well, I don't know, why would this building revert back to the city?
Because the law requires that upon, if they're no longer using it for nonprofit status, it reverts. We can discuss as a condition what clauses would be invoked on a reversion. Do we then revalue it, pay them back their investment as long as the encumbrances that remain and we can talk about that too. But the objective is, the reason you're gonna get this at a discount and the reason the city's willing to do it is because we want to help the nonprofits who provide service to our citizens. But if they're not gonna do that, remember, I'm assuming we're gonna give it to them at a reduced rate. Right? We need to recoup, so.
Exactly, okay.
Okay, so that's the issue. And we can talk about the methods of reversion. We can say it's just an automatic reversion because it will be subject to encumbrances. There's lots of issues there, right? You don't even know when they're gonna walk away from it. Maybe they've only paid 5 years of a 15-year note.
And that's worst case scenario. I don't
I agree, right. But that's what that purpose is because it's a public asset that we are selling for a lower rate. Sir, any other points of discussion area? Because I really want to help the public be able to come and talk to us too, but to let you know what we see in the agreement as issues.
So do we need some sort of language to make sure it stays within the realm of nonprofit we're envisioning today? For instance, somebody comes in and wants to put a slot car track in there, call themselves a nonprofit. I mean, there's a lot of businesses out there that.
We could add a
are
clause. We
incorporated
could add a
as-
clause that they can't transfer it to another nonprofit without the authority of the Board of Supervisors. So that we can ensure
and
we're
there's-
still getting a social service.
There's plenty of businesses out there incorporated as nonprofits
Yes.
that are not.
Well, or they're not doing a social service. I think that's more what we're interested in, a social service nonprofit agency.
Mayor, if I may, for the
Yes,
record.
absolutely.
Robert Nellis, NRS 244284 refers to NRS 82021, which defines what a corporation for public benefit means. And it says it's in section 2, it's organized for a public or charitable purpose. So I would think that would help define,
It's wide open, much more wide open than you think.
okay.
So
Yeah. I know
Builders
more than one.
Alliance is a public thing for all contractors. So I think and maybe the esteemed could help us here, but could we not put a condition that they could not transfer it without, and we wouldn't, and whatever that language is that said we won't unduly withhold approval if it's, or whatever?
Sure, yeah. Adam Tully, Deputy District Attorney. Yeah, I guess the restrictions on alienation, right, preventing people from freely transferring property are generally disfavored. But it's the type of thing that we could probably make work with that type of language, that the authorization won't be unreasonably withheld.
Right. But that way we can make sure it doesn't go to, like you said, whoops, that wasn't our intention. We want a social service. Ms. Schutte?
Well, just to build on that, so qualified nonprofit, so the wording isn't that it's any nonprofit. And going back to 10 on page 312, if it determines doing so is in the best interest of Carson City. So I think that at least includes the opportunity to have a conversation in terms of the role of this building and the why behind the decision to open it to bid to a qualified nonprofit, so not just any nonprofit.
I think I need a little bit
Well,
more
in
clarification.
terms
Are
of-
you
so what's the
suggesting we're
best
going to
interest?
write what qualified means? Because the qualified is pursuant to the statute.
No, I'm not, no,
Okay.
it's just to help clarify, because the conversation that we've been having is, well, what if a racetrack wanted to come in and they're a nonprofit per se? but that's not within the spirit of what we're doing. And so that's why qualified within the parameters of this sale. So does that need to be spelled out, or is the initial language in terms of what it is currently used for? So if we're talking about RSVP and circles and, Ron Wood, cooperative extension, the umbrella of the services that are currently being provided, how that benefits Carson City and ultimately really not only helps the community, it keeps taxpayers aren't paying for these services that the city would otherwise pay for. I mean, I don't know if this is something that needs to be spelled out just to direct, just if there's concern, or, anyway.
What do you say?
That's, I think, muddy.
Yeah, so,
I want to do that.
Adam Tully, Deputy District Attorney. I think that the main point, the trouble with hammering it down is that discreetly is that the board really hems itself in. And there might be a very good reason to disregard the bid of a otherwise qualified nonprofit that fits within our narrowed language. And now the board's, if we've really hammered down that language, the board loses that discretion.
Perfect. No, I appreciate the clarification, and I think right now is the time to get it out there and discuss it, so thank you.
Okay. So in general then, if there's, I had some public comment requests. If we've missed something of discussion, the first on the list that wishes to testify I have is Lisa Taylor. So what did we miss, Lisa?
Thanks very much for the opportunity to come today. As the extension educator for the University of Nevada, Reno, we really believe that there are wonderful things ahead in terms of these decisions that will be made will certainly be in the best interests of the public. We provide educational programs. We conduct research and outreach on behalf of the university as identified in 6 areas. So that's 4-H, youth development. We do community development, health and nutrition, horticulture, natural resources, and agriculture-related services and programs. Today, I'm to speak about the agenda item, and we just want to clarify that we respect and value our complex partners, Ron Wood's Family Resource Center, the Circles Initiative, and the Nevada Rural Counties Retired and Senior Volunteer Program. But, and as we think about their programs, they are complementary to us, but they don't serve the same activities. So as a local office for the university, we do receive ad valorem tax monies for our work in Carson, and we have a responsibility to determine how best these monies could meet the needs of local Carson City citizens. We are not planning to submit a bid. However, we need to carefully weigh the costs and the benefits of remaining in Northgate Complex once you conduct the bidding process and the property owner is identified and takes possession. I want to thank you, supervisors, as well as staff members, and certainly our colleagues in the complex for the time and effort that's been spent today. And I just wanted to clarify the fact that we won't be submitting the bid, but we really care about the process.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Next on the list for testimony is Denise Hecht Mack, Circles, right? And if you don't, anybody can pass if they want, but okay. Sometimes the discussion goes, whoops, they already said it all. Okay, the next one I have is JD Powers. You're good? Well, that was easier. Okay. Thank you so much. And so just to clarify, part of the reason, oh, is somebody else? Oh, it says you did not want to testify. It says no.
I thought that said a county resident.
Sorry, you're all right. That's all right. That's all right. Miss Buckingham?
Thank you.
It's okay. We're good.
All right.
And you did
Okay.
properly say you did not live here. Thank you for that, too. I appreciate that.
All right.
Nope, you need to be green.
Okay, there we go. Okay, such a loud voice, sometimes it's hard to figure it out. So Joyce Buckingham, I'm the director at Ronwood Family Resource Center, and I appreciate the process and being able to speak at this time. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it's interesting because a couple of the items that you have already brought up are particularly concerning to us. So I'm going to just go to the chase and we'll talk about those. Pretty much as my partners have indicated, we are a very cohesive group. We offer different services, we work together, and it has been a wonderful marriage. And many of us have been there 13 years, and we love it. It's home. We're right in the middle of a low to moderate income neighborhood. We serve the folks in the neighborhood. So basically, there are two issues that I wanted to speak of. Ronwood would like additional time to prepare the bid. We have been working with our financial institution to get our line of credit for the proposal, but commercial loans are 60 days. Boom, 60 days. So in order for that to take place, obviously, that is what I'm asking for. The other thing too is the NRS 244.284 subsection 3 regarding the clause that prevents basically reverts back to the county. That's a tough one. The banking industry is going, what? I give you a loan and the city can take the property back, you know? I would like to suggest maybe utilizing NRS statute 244.281 and NRS statute 244.281 subsection 5 regarding the process of the bid and the sale. And the notation that I have on 244.284 subsection 3 basically talks about lease or conveyance, whereas the other NRS statutes that I had noted earlier, that is for sale of real property that the county owns. So I would like that to be visited as well. Yes, we are throwing our hat in the ring, and I have the ball rolling. We're just asking for this proposal to be revised so that we can receive the needed banknote and line of credit verification, and the resolution be amended to exclude the clause that the city, that it reverts back to the city. My banker particularly was very concerned about that particular line item. Instead, what I'm proposing is indicating that the nonprofit buyer must occupy the building for the life of the loan and only sell to a qualifying nonprofit in the future as approved by the city.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
timing. She timed her 3 minutes. That's pretty good. That is pretty good. Thank you so much. And I will disclose too, part of the reason that we didn't discuss the pricing component prior to the public testimony is it's imperative to me that this be a fair process, and those that wish to be a party to the bid shall not be a party to the discussion of the price of the bid. So I just wanted to put that on the record that those are two distinct and separate parts. So we'll now bring it backwards here and we'll take no more public testimony on that. But just so that you know, that's why I held that particular portion. I just want to make it fair to everyone. Denny, did you have a? It just all happened. I'm sorry. Did you want to have public comment? No, they were all public comment. Would you like to do public comment? Come on up. Not until you start talking. Okay.
Mayor and supervisors, I'm floored. I hadn't prepared for being put into a position like this. I had the very good fortune of working at Ron Woods, and I saw how that whole facility seemed to work together between the RSVP and the other programs that we're on. And I'm really baffled as why you would want to have them have to go through this after all the service that they've done for this community, all of the benefits that they've made for the local and then the external parts of the community. I just don't understand why would you want to do this. And so I need to know more, obviously. But at this point, I'm totally opposed to even putting it up for bid. And the idea of disposing of a city property when we have so little city property available to make decisions in the future about, why would we want to go through this? Why not just find renters that you're happy with? And I can't imagine any better tenants. So I'm really, as far as its location, accessibility, and the availability for what they need. And unless I'm missing something, you really don't want to move. Because, and I don't, as a community member, I'm just going like, are we that bad off financially that we have to dispose of something and then put everybody through the process of buying, selling, and all the increments of the legal aspects of this? What motivated this? I just have lots to find out. And I'm really angry even that it came up at this point in my understanding. So I'm so physically wound up right now that if you could see, and you probably can, part of my face is totally red because I can feel I'm on fire here. And with all due respect, I didn't see anything in the paper suggesting this is going to happen to a place that I think is a part of the community. It's sort of like a mainstay. If I say something to somebody I see on the street, do you know where Ron Wood is? Or where you would know where Fish is or such. I bring it up because somebody's hungry or looks like they need some clothes. They know where to go. And it's accessible in a way that they don't have to move through communities and streets and all that. So they can Main Street off to Hot Springs Road and then North Gate, Gate. So I'm really frustrated about this, and I look forward to learning more so that I can bring down my anxiety and get a better grip on things. And I know you're all caring people, but why would you do this? And if it's financial or some other business thing, please explain it to me, because otherwise I'm not going to get down from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just for the record, we have been working on this project and proposal for probably about a year now. This is not the first discussion of this item. The rationale is the city owns a particular piece of property that it is time to invest, remodel work, construction work, that would be necessary. We did a study that indicated that was millions of dollars. So we either needed to start renting it for a appropriate amount to be able to recover, to be able to fix the building, not $1 a year for rent. And so the discussion really became that we could dispose of the building pursuant to law, to the rules, and that we had an opportunity as a board to dispose of it at a lesser rate than a general public sale of a building. So it didn't have anything to do with current dollars. It had to do with not expending taxpayer dollars to start fixing the building. And so it was done in communication with those tenants that live there, and everybody is on the page together. We're now just working out what I call the details, right? To make sure we get those right, like they came up and testified. What are the mechanisms that's going to make this is good for the community as a whole? Because, right, we have the responsibility for both sides. We want good social services to continue to be provided, but I also have to protect the taxpayers, the general taxpayer on the assets of the city. So we have, I believe, done a very good balance here of protecting both the general public but maintaining social services. So I hope that helps clarify and answer. And sorry, yours is done. We'd be more than happy at a later time to have further discussion with you too. Anytime, Denny, you can stop in. So, mhm.
Well,
You're welcome. No, again, I appreciate the questions. It's a good, why are we doing this? But that was the reasons. Mr. Jones, Supervisor Jones?
we're not getting rid of Ron Wood. We're supporting him.
All right, it's the opposite.
I said, you've misunderstood. We're not getting rid of, or trying to get rid of them. We're trying to support them. We're giving them an opportunity to have the building. And
Right.
I think you misunderstand the reason we're doing this. There's no malice involved here.
It's okay.
So,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, just to double check. Anybody else? Okay, we're going to close the public portion of this discussion. Now, let's, if you'd like, if this works for all of you, does anyone have any changes or concerns about page 1? Everybody was okay with page 1, which is our, why we're doing it and the law that gives us the authority to do it. So is everybody okay with page 1?
we're going to allow additional time.
We're going to go page by page just to
Right.
make sure we're not,
Okay.
we don't miss a condition that needs to go in here. All right.
All right.
Then everybody was okay with 1. On page 2, shall we start with a discussion on the minimum price? We will now talk about that section. For me, I was reading through everything and we've got quite the range of values. So that I think that makes it extremely hard. You know, we had 270,000 up to $1,000,008. We already had discussed a couple of ideas during the retreat when all of the public and everyone came to that. I don't mind starting with the range. Do we want to look at the lower one was 270 to 350, somewhere in that range? We could split the 770 in half. Anybody else have an idea of where we want to start the required bid?
Yeah, I do.
Supervisor Jones?
I would say a reasonable and fair amount would be split the 700.
The 770, that was the low bid, and divide that in half, so that would make it 385?
Right.
Everybody comfortable with that? Or
So we've tried to sell this building multiple times and have had 0 takers. I mean, if it's legal to sell it below whatever the appraisal is, just open it for bids. Take what comes.
Well, I'm not comfortable with that. If we don't get bids, we can always come again, right?
Yeah,
So,
okay.
all right, so 385. Let's look at the next blanks to fill in. The sealed bid auction to be held. I'm okay. I think they're going to need the time to get their letters of credit. So we are now in April, May, June. Do we want to try for the second meeting in June? What is our date for that? 16th? So June 16th, everybody okay with June 16th to do the bids? Oh, where's this thing? Okay, so if we're doing that, when we get then to number 8, I would like to change that then to no later than 5 p.m. We'll open them at 8:45 a.m. on June 16th. So we'll do that we'll do our required little business to start the day, and then we'll do the bid work right away. But I would like those sealed bids to actually be received in the city manager's office by 5 p.m. on June the 15th. Not that somebody's sitting in the office trying to get a bid and run it over here. So does that make sense? Is that okay? I'm looking at Adam will give me a yuck sign if I've done something wrong here. Okay, so let's go with 5 p.m. the day before, that the bids have to be into the city manager's office, and then they'll bring them over for us to open in the meeting. Going down then to 11A. The bid offer may be all cash or for 25% down with third-party financing, I think that condition can be removed. Do we care? We don't care. Yeah, because the next one's gonna cover, their cash contribution is the 15,000 to make them a qualified bidder. So we will strike A, and obviously it would be renumbered. On, just technically now it's an A, but on the B, the security deposit must be paid within 2 business days from the notification. Okay? Payment in full must be received from the highest bidder within 60 or 75. Which do you guys, do you want, or 60 days with a, do you want to do 60? 60 to get it done?
Well, if the banks are set up on 60, they may need a few days to get it from the bank to us.
So we say 70 days,
Okay.
max 70. Okay, 70 days. Okay, the next section, payment in full must be received by the highest bidder within 70. The city will hold the security deposit of the second highest bidder until payment is received. So here's a discussion point. Should we just, at the point of, I took the first guy's $15,000, I'm holding that, I'll credit it against his sale. If he doesn't make it in the 70 days, we keep the 15,000. Why wouldn't it just then be a notification to the second highest bidder, and they then have 2 business days to give us the 15,000 security deposit, and then they get the 70 days? Because that way it'd be the right of rescission that,
Right.
everything has changed. So why wouldn't we just duplicate the section for the second bidder instead of holding up the second bidder's $15,000 for 70 days? Just wondering, could we just duplicate the process?
If that's the board's pleasure, we can do that.
That seems a lot simpler too, than the 10-day grace period and all that
other
stuff.
I just think we could just duplicate it. You'll get your notice and you have 2 business days to come give us the 15,000, and if we can't get through 2 of them, we got a different problem. We're probably gonna have to go back to the baseline. Okay, if that works, so we will duplicate process for second bidder. Now, the other point of discussion is what happens if they do not continue to occupy. So 2 different things, right? So no matter whether it's a purchase, a conveyance, a lease, it's all about the occupation of the building being used for the purpose of when we grant that they have to continue that purpose. Ms. Buckingham gave us a reference of NRS 244.2813.3 and .5. Is there a difference with distinction on conveyance versus the sale method that we have? Sorry, I know it's attorney speak, but you're going to have to help us there, Adam.
Yeah. So I think the main problem with finding a mechanism that eliminates the reversion, and I understand why commercial lenders would have heartburn about that. The main problem with that is it's tough to then find a mechanism which allows the city to give preferential treatment to nonprofits, and then it's opened up to everyone.
Can we do as I suggested, though? Can we add the caveat that they may sell to another nonprofit with our permission, so that the bank would have an assurance of a recovery, which is, I'm assuming, what the bank is looking for, to get their note. That's the whole point.
Yeah, it's I can't pin that down for you right now. I might be able to later, but because it's a restriction on alienation, my default is that's going to be tough. But that's not to say it's not possible. I just can't say for sure right now.
Well, we got to do something, because if the banks won't give us a note.
But the issue
What's the
isn't
alternative?
the issue is only if they stop using it
Correct.
does anything revert. So it's not, right? So the stop use would mean they vacated, they're no longer in business is really, which I don't even know how to say this, but I hope you're not, because that means we don't need the services anymore, right? So it's kind of one of those double-edged swords. You want them not to have to do it because the community is healthy and well, but the reality is I think they're going to be around for certainly long enough to cover this note. So I'm just trying to find language. I, as the bank, understand the issue, but I don't know that I see the risk. They've been there for quite a long time, but I was just looking for could we just write a line in there that indicated, that it could come back and be disposed of to another nonprofit or whatever with our permission?
Yeah, well,
Something,
I guess.
just something that
sorry.
simple.
Yeah, I guess, sorry, I think I was thinking of this a little wrong when you first asked it. I think a better answer is if the winning bidder wants to later transfer to another entity, they are only able to convey the interest that they own, and the interest that they own is essentially full ownership, except if you use it for something other than a nonprofit that provides charitable service to the city residents, it reverts to the city. So, I mean,
Okay.
I think anyone who came in as a new buyer would, of course, have notice of that. It'd be in a recorded deed, and if they wanted to run an operation that was kind of risky, right? Like one of those kind of nonprofits in name only that we referenced earlier, they'd be doing that at their own risk.
Okay. I think that would help give it just a little more protection for them so yes, it could be transferred,
Is that going to
conveyed.
be acceptable to banks? That's
We don't
the
know.
question.
Don't know.
Well, yeah, but then that eliminates everybody from bidding, right?
We're not gonna know till they try to get one. I don't
She
know.
already has, and she said they've told her they won't do it. Right,
But he said
Joyce?
it gave him heartburn. I had a bank that said, okay. Right.
Yes, please. Come up.
Mr. Jones, excuse me.
Joyce.
Thank you. No, sorry. Public comment is ended. Do we need a little more time for staff to work out or craft some language? Are we comfortable with allowing the district attorney's office to craft that portion of the language to give it, let's see, what's that wording we often use, Dan, that we allow the district attorney's office to work that section of the language to meet our intent, which is to allow the building to be transferred if necessary for the same purposes or something of that nature. But we don't have the exact language yet because they need to work that out.
So, Madam Mayor, I think we maybe have a couple of different options here we can explore for the board's consideration. A is to allow some additional time for the DA's office to research this, and then maybe to bring it back for further discussion. The other option is to provide that sort, or to grant that sort of authority to the DA's office and working with Public Works, and we can come up with that research. There's a lot out there, so I do agree with Adam Tolley that, when it comes to different or existing case law with respect to alienation of real property, you have different sorts, right? The courts have examined, for example, disabling restraints on alienation, which is just sort of categorically always voided as a matter of public policy. A disabling restriction being, for example, where the purchaser of real property can never, under any circumstance, convey that property to another person. Courts have generally found such disabling covenants to be just completely void. You do have other restrictions on alienation, which the courts have upheld as being reasonable, especially in the commercial context. I think something like this, off the cuff right now, I would feel fairly comfortable, and I'm getting that sense from my colleague Adam as well, especially in light of the fact that we have a statutory, restriction that's embedded in NRS as is anyway. That being said, however, I don't think that the DA's office is in a position right now to provide definitive or a definitive position on this. So I offer up two different options. One is to provide us additional time to come back with staff and present once again to the board with those final findings, or B, for this board to grant that authority for staff and the DA's office to continue working together. And to the extent that we can make that analysis, we can then conform the language of the resolution accordingly.
I knew there was a fancy word, conforming. Does the board have a pleasure on whether you want it to come back, or you want to just allow the DA's office to conform that section and get this going?
So
What's your
I would
pleasure?
have to lean towards bringing it back to this body. I mean, there's obvious trepidation on both parties, Mr. Yu and Mr. Tully, in regards to giving us some solid advice. So I would like it to come back to this body.
I agree.
Okay with that? All right, so then what we're going to do is we've already completed all the other sections of this discussion. So the next version, can I have that the next meeting, as we want to get this ball rolling? Does that mean we want to move it to the first meeting in July then to start the sale, because we need the 2 weeks for the conforming language? So the other change, we'll move it to the first meeting in July and then comport that. You have all the other pieces on the record that you need to give us the new language that comes back. Is there any other point we've missed that staff needs direction on? Is there any other points that staff needs direction?
Yeah, Deputy DA Adam Tully, give me just a minute to
No
check
problem.
my notes and make sure.
Mayor, I'd like to thank Robert this is a great report. You've done a lot of good work on this.
Oh, yeah. Very much.
Yeah, I think we're all set.
We're all set. So with that, then this item will be tabled. Staff has direction and can bring it back at the next meeting. That would
Can
be
I
great.
add one more thing?
Certainly.
I understand this is a public bid that any qualifying nonprofit can get in on. However, we do have tenants that we need to be sensitive with, and I would like staff, as soon as possible, like when we get noticed that this is going to be on an agenda, these folks need to be noticed as well. Keep them in the loop with what's going on. We have to be sensitive to what the end result is for these folks as well.
Certainly. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks again for your hard work. Okay. Thanks, Joyce. Okay, we're going to give it just a moment. Does anyone need a recess? Everybody good? We can get another item in? Okay. With that, we're going to take up item 25A, which is discussion and possible action regarding the revisions and updates to our Arts and Culture Strategic Plan for 2022 through 2026. Miss Soul, hello and welcome.
Good morning, Deborah Soul for the record. I'm here to present to you the 2022 Carson City Arts and Cultural Strategic Plan, which was updated and reviewed recently. The 2016 Carson City Arts and Culture Strategic Plan has been reviewed and updated based on engagement with key stakeholders in the community, integration of best practice in arts and cultural planning, and the current arts and cultural programs that are now in place in Carson City. The rationale behind the review and the update of this plan. Firstly, the plan was 5 years old and therefore does not reflect the current situation, environment, and tourism and economic context. Secondly, the city's recently adopted strategic plan includes implementation of the Arts and Culture Plan as one of its priorities. Therefore, it is important that we have an up-to-date, clearly focused plan with an implementation schedule that will advance the cultural sector and the benefits that it provides to the city. Thirdly, the 2016 plan does not include any content about the Carson City existing arts and culture strengths and assets, its facilities, its cultural organizations, artists, programs, or events. Fourthly, there was little evidence of consultation with the community for the 2016 plan to identify its local needs, capabilities, and aspirations. It's essential that our cultural organizations, tourism-related businesses, and community are actively involved and that their needs and aspirations are reflected in the directions that we're taking moving forward. They're the arms and legs of arts and culture in Carson City, and they will be central in its implementation. And fifth, the plan needs to be restructured so that it is a tool that we can actually use to guide the implementation process and ensure ongoing evaluation of our progress. So consultation for this update of the plan was undertaken with 3 stakeholder groups. There was consultation with Carson City cultural organizations. There was consultation with residents and businesses from the community at large. And then the results of these phases of consultation were presented to Carson City lodging properties, who also provided their input on current priorities. And then the results were presented to the Cultural Commission, and their input was incorporated into the final plan. The research and plan development process that was utilized has transformed the previous plan, which was a simple list of 49 recommended actions that were drawn from municipalities across the country, into a strategic roadmap specific to Carson City that focuses on 34 current priorities. The plan has been restructured to identify the 8 overall goals or objectives that provide the rationale for all of the recommended actions in the plan, and it now includes an implementation section that identifies timeframes, lead agents, and enables ongoing evaluation of progress. So the research and community engagement process that was utilized incorporates the current needs and aspirations of the Carson City community and its cultural organizations, and it also ensures that there's a shared sense of ownership in the plan and a shared commitment in its implementation. The only other comments that I would make are that I've noticed a couple of small points that I will edit in the plan. One is on page 11, 4.3 under Goal 4. The heading actually says Annual Arts Summit, and then it talks about a cultural forum to be convened every 2 years, so it's obviously not an annual summit that we're looking at, it's a biannual summit. And also, the footer note on page 23 will be edited so that it says Arts and Culture Strategic Plan.
Thank you. Does any member have a question? Supervisor Giomi?
Yeah, no question. Just
Just a comment?
just a comment as a member of the CTA and seeing the transformation. I really applaud you, Deborah, for the work that you did in this. In my opinion, this is the way a community plan should be put together with a lot of community and stakeholder input. I like that it's broad in nature in the sense that it can be used as a roadmap even if you're not in the arts community. And I think that's a key really in making this come to life, is that if you happen to be a developer or a business and you want to incorporate some form of art in your business or in your exterior spaces, this can be used as a roadmap for you to help do that in a way that is cohesive within the community, so that we're not piecemealing things. And I think that probably is as important as anything, because It shows a cohesiveness of mind when we didn't have that before. So thank you for that.
Supervisor Shute?
Well, I applaud you on this report. Reading through it, it's just inspiring really what is taking place and just there's so many working parts and so many people who are impacted, whether through actually being within the arts and culture community or benefiting from the arts and culture community. So kudos. I had one suggestion that I would love to bring up on page 723, 6.1. Recommended activities on the incorporate culture in municipal planning, decision-making, and placemaking as a means to improve quality of life, enhance cultural tourism, economic development, and community problem solving. So 6.1 on the youth at risk collaborations through art and culture. The other relevant partners, it's listing social service agencies, and I'm just wondering if schools can be considered in that. And on the within the narrative or the activity of collaborate on projects geared to building self-esteem and multidisciplinary skills for at-risk youth and teenagers, and their peers. So I think about when at-risk youth on their own have an opportunity to be introduced to positive activities and those things that inspire and encourage them. Sometimes they struggle with actual being able to follow through because their peers have not been introduced to the same opportunities or have access to the programs or conversations or experiences that the individual youth has. And so I was just thinking in those terms, and I might be missing the spirit here, but just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Deborah Soul here. I don't have any difficulty with adding school districts to the other relevant partners under that section 6. I think that actually is appropriate and that they should be a partner. Yes, it's a good suggestion.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a comment? So is there any public comment on this item? Again, didn't see anyone. Okay. Just want to say or echo what everyone else is. I think we ended up with a good product. I know that it took several iterations, but as Supervisor Giomi said, I think that each iteration got better. And sometimes really taking the time to review things with all of the stakeholders, you get a pretty good product in the end. So I'm pretty proud of the work of all the groups involved and just want to do a big shout out for that. So, and again, thank you for all your efforts and welcome to the team, right? So with that, Supervisor Giomi, do you have a motion?
Yes, ma'am. I move to approve the Carson City Arts and Cultural Strategic Plan with the change read into the record for section 6.1 and with the authority for Ms. Soul to make non-substantive and grammatical changes.
I have a motion and a second for the approval of the strategic plan as noted on the record with small corrections. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried. Yay. Thank you so much again, Deborah. I know it was a lot of work. Okay. Clear that. Okay, we are now going to move on to agenda item 25B. Excuse me, discussion and possible action on the language for a ballot question to be included on the November 2022 general election ballot. for the continuation of a 5-cent excise tax on diesel fuel. Ms. Paulson, just a brief, why are we here?
So, good morning. So, back in 2020, I believe it was, the board adopted ordinance number 2020-7 to impose the 5-cent per gallon diesel fuel tax. And at that time, the tax became effective August 1st, and it is subject to a sunset provision, providing that it will expire on December 31st of 2022 if it is not approved as a ballot question by the public. So we're here today just to talk about the proposed ballot language.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Rolette, are you gonna come up, or you, and Ben? Mr. Johnson? And if you could start, I had a lot of questions of why we're even doing this. So if you can, it would be helpful, because there was a lot of public discussion. I'm sure some of you have gotten emails too that, you know, why are you putting this ballot measure on? And I'm like, as blunt as I can be, I'm like, because that's what was passed 2 years ago, that we would do a ballot measure and ask the people. So, correct? Or am I missing something here, Mr. Johnson? Thank you.
Ben Johnson, Senior Deputy District Attorney, for the record. That's absolutely correct, Madam Mayor. So when the board had the option of either adopting the diesel tax, or they could also put it before the voters in order to enact it, the board in 2020 chose sort of a hybrid model where they enacted the tax, but then ultimately wanted the decision to go before the voters. So that's why the sunset provision, I believe, was put into place. And so this is the year of the general election. The general election will be in November. If the majority of voters do not approve the continuation of this diesel tax, then it will expire by limitation on December 31st, and the city won't continue to collect it.
Does any member have any question on the actual proposed language of this ballot? Is everybody?
I do.
Supervisor White?
Thank you. I think just for a little clarity for the public, I'm looking at two changes. In the explanation, about halfway through that paragraph where it starts on June 4, 2020, Carson City Board of Supervisors enacted ordinance 2020-7. I would like to insert there that vote was a 4-to-1 vote. I think it's important for the public to understand where the Board of Supervisors actually stood on this issue at that time. Then if we go down to the very bottom where it explains what your vote will do, where it says a no vote would cause the current 5-cent gallon on diesel to expire, I think we should substitute allow for cause, because the cause is already in effect. The no vote really won't cause anything to happen. It will simply allow the current decided action to continue. So I think it's more clear to the public what will actually happen there.
Can you say how you
Yeah,
want it?
what? Sorry. Go ahead.
Read the sentence the way you want it to read.
A no vote would allow the current 5-cent per gallon tax on diesel to expire.
Take the word cause out. Okay. Does any other member have a Supervisor Giomi?
Yeah, I would agree to the second change. I couldn't agree to the first change. I don't think we should be putting voting records into our ballot questions. If an individual wants to look at that, it's a simple enough matter to look at that June 4th board meeting and not only hear that there was one board member who voted no, who happens to be the current mayor, but there were also several people, including yourself, who made comments against it. And, you know, I think it's important, if people want to hear that they should hear the entirety of it, not just how the board voted. It's more, to me, the discussion at these meetings is more than just our vote. And I think if you look at law, it really goes to intent. And so, in my mind, it does a disservice to put just the vote in here when the people should be going back to that meeting minute if they have that much interest in it and listening to the entirety of the meeting. So I couldn't support the 4-1 vote in, but I can support the second change.
Does any other members of the board have a thought on that? Supervisor Schutte? Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Is there any public comment on this ballot measure wording? Okay, then I'll bring it back up to the board. So the discussion, Supervisor White suggested 2 edits. So let's talk about the first edit of inserting the vote. While I understand what Supervisor White is trying to indicate here, I also agree with Supervisor Giomi that you really don't record those in ballot measures. I just don't think that's appropriate for language of a ballot measure. I do agree and understand that you want the public to be informed, but the yes answers and the no answers of support or non-support for ballot measures have the options to fully expand or do that component, which is the committee's job that takes on under our next agenda item to either take language that was done during the discussion or not. So I just think that this particular language is about the ballot measure itself. And so I don't support adding a vote in the actual explanation of the ballot. So you either? Okay. I agree. That doesn't belong in it? Okay. And everybody's okay with the allow? Yeah, I agree with that. I think that was a good catch, Supervisor White. So with that, I'll accept a motion for the ballot measure language. Supervisor White?
I move to approve the language for the diesel fuel ballot question with the modification of striking cause and inserting allow at the no vote explanation.
A motion and a second to approve the ballot language with a change to now read, and no vote would allow the current 5-cent per gallon tax on diesel fuel to expire. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you so much.
Madam Mayor, who seconded?
Me.
Oh.
Supervisor Giomi, thank you. Okay, we're now going to move on to agenda item number 26A. This is discussion and possible action for the appointment of members to one committee to prepare arguments in favor of, and a second committee to prepare arguments in opposition to the ballot. Ms. Rollet is ready. Go.
Good morning, Aubrey Roulette, Carson City Clerk Recorder for the record. On March 9th, 2022, the clerk's office announced it was accepting applications from individuals for appointment on 2 committees to draft arguments advocating for or opposing the 2022 general election local ballot question, which regards the excise tax of 5 cents per gallon on diesel fuel sold in Carson City. In response to the announcement and within the deadline to accept the application, the clerk's office received 2. One from Jim Dodson to draft the argument advocating for, and one from Chris Harris to draft the argument opposing the 5-cent diesel fuel tax. Applicants were provided documents regarding the timeline for submission of the drafted arguments and rebuttals, as well as the rules that would govern the committees and the drafting of the ballot question arguments and rebuttals. It is the clerk's recommendation that Mr. Dodson and Mr. Harris be appointed to the ballot question committees to draft the arguments advocating for and opposing the 5-cent diesel fuel tax, and to draft the subsequent rebuttals to the arguments within the timeline provided by the clerk.
Does any member have a question? No? Is there any member of the public with a discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll accept a motion. Supervisor Giomi?
I move to appoint Jim Dodson to the committee to prepare arguments advocating for approval of the ballot question in discussion, and I move to appoint Chris Harris to the committee to prepare arguments opposing approval of the ballot question in discussion.
Second.
I have a motion by Supervisor Giomi and a second by Supervisor White. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you both to Mr. Dotson and Mr. Harris for your public service. Thank you. Okay, excuse me. We're now on agenda item number 27, which is our non-action items. City Manager Paulson, do you have any items to report under this?
Nothing for today.
Does any member of the board, Deputy Manager Hicks?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the record, Stephanie Hicks, Deputy City Manager. I just wanted to update the board on our charter review process. We have closed the period for public input for recommendations for the charter review as of March 31st. The agenda has posted for our next charter review meeting, which will be on April 12th, so that is available online. We received 5 comments from the public and have 4 recommendations from staff, so we will hear those at the meeting on the 12th. And our intent is to bring those before the Board of Supervisors, depending on discussion at the charter review in July.
Thank you so much for that update. Supervisor Schutte?
Thank you. The last couple of weeks have been busy. Carson Water Subconservancy hosted the Carson River Watershed Forum on March 29th and 30th, and what an amazing forum. All kinds of guest speakers. They spoke on issues ranging from soil health, working groups, the floodplain, recreation, trails, web access, all of that. It was very well done, and just kudos to the staff of Carson Water Subconservancy District. Parks and Rec, they are staying so busy with different programs and outreach. Community involvement. This weekend on Saturday is a cleanup at Lone Mountain Cemetery. And
Just in
I will
time.
let you speak to Sunday, but then just the different programs that they have, kayaking, hiking, all of that. So just well done. And then sat in on workforce housing meeting yesterday, and then on Monday, the Era of Homelessness, and really talking about causes of homelessness and the layers behind what might lead an individual or a family to become homeless, and just the different, what constitutes homelessness, and unsheltered, unhoused. It's really quite involved, and as such, it's a difficult problem to solve. But I'm encouraged with the folks involved in the meetings and the conversations. There's some great ideas that I feel that are being put forth and that we can act on.
Perfect. Supervisor Giomi?
Yeah, I would just like to offer my condolences to the mayor on the passing of her father, who I'd like to read into the record, contributed significantly to this community. Art Horsell was a volunteer firefighter with Warren Engine Company. He was my first training lieutenant when I became a volunteer in 1977. I have a lot of good memories of Art, but more importantly, for over 20 years, he provided service to this community as a volunteer firefighter. And I just wanted to offer my condolences and recognize that on the record.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, thank
Sorry,
you.
didn't
No,
warn ya.
thank you. Yeah, no, but thank you very much for that. I really do appreciate it. I can remember many, many nights of a plectron. So that's telling you how far back we're going, right? And the boots were by the and he just would step into the boots, pull it up, and out the door he'd go. So definitely a fond memory of my childhood. I do want to go over and once again invite the entire community to come to Lone Mountain Cemetery on Sunday at 1:15. I hope you as members of the board can come and help us pay tribute to those forgotten Civil War soldiers. We have 44 of them that are unnamed, They don't have any family or anyone to help care for that section. So I'm just thrilled that our community got together and really are stepping up the improvements there. Thanking this board again. Last year we approved the irrigation project so we can put some water and some things to some areas. The trees are all planted. Again, thank this board for the tree donation. And excited to tell you that we even received, I believe, sufficient funding to put the new signage that matches our sign master plan. And that will be the first section to be updated to do that with an interpretive sign. So it no longer will look like a freeway road sign telling you the section. So I'm just very impressed with the entire community helping the Rotary Club, Assemblyman O'Neill and Senator Tatro. We even had Michelle Fiore from Las Vegas that was there for a purpose to give us money. So really, really want to thank everyone. And there's a ton of them on a list that you'll be able to see on the program. But Dawn and Sherry Cool made a substantial donation to do that too. So I just want a big shout out and hope everybody will come and put flowers and flags and just pay tribute. So again, thank you. Supervisor White.
Thank you. I just wanted to let this board know that this past Tuesday, the Nevada Off-Highway Vehicle Commission elected me to be their chairman. So my calendar is even fuller than it was before.
Welcome to the life of a board member on a board of supervisors. It's more than being on the board of supervisors. I think we all serve in a lot of extra capacities that come with it. So thanks for stepping up to do that, Mr. White.
And there's a lot of work to do with that commission.
There you go. I see Aubrey Rolette. Do you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to update the public who's watching as well as the board that April 15th is the upcoming deadline for the opt-out form for mail ballot. So for those voters who are wishing to vote in person and do not want to receive a mail ballot in the mail, we need to have that form received by our office 5:00 p.m. April 15th. You can still vote in person even if you do receive a mail ballot, but that is just another deadline.
Thank you. Supervisor Jones?
I would just like to comment, our city is beautiful right now, with all the trees, foliage, and all the improvements we've made on South Carson. And I'm really looking forward to what we do on Highway 50. But our town is beautiful right now.
It is beautiful. It's a good way to say it. Is anybody else, any stuff to get out? Okay, we do not have a closed meeting this time. Maybe the next meeting or so we will. Okay, item 28 is final public comment. Come on up, Denny.
Mayor, supervisors, staff, and present company. Thank you very much for the 3 minutes of letting me get that off my chest. Gave you all an opportunity of seeing me angry, which is pretty rare. The deal is it also gave the community an opportunity to see how gracious the mayor responded and gave me a good base for my better understanding. So I want to thank you very much. I want to thank you all for this opportunity to be part of the community, and I've taken your advice and you know what it was. So I am limiting some of my responses, but also I just thank you all very much. This is a great opportunity, and thank you, Mayor.
Okay, have a good day, Denny. Have a good day.
Thank you, Denny.
Anybody? Okay, I don't see any other public to have a public comment. She's pressed, but that doesn't mean you're not a public comment. No? Okay. With that, then, thank you all. We're in adjournment. What a great board meeting. Good job, everyone. you.